welcome. Thank you for joining today's Art Talk Live. My name is Elizabeth Rudy, and I'm the Carl A. Weyerhaeuser Curator of Prints at the Harvard Art Museums. As we begin today's talk, the Harvard Art Museums acknowledge that Harvard University is seated on the traditional and ancestral territory of the Massachusetts people, and we strive to honor this relationship. Art Talks Live offer an up-close look at works from our collections. Today's talk features a conversation with Allan Edmunds, the founder and director of the Brandywine Workshop and Archives located in Philadelphia. Allan joins us on the occasion of the current exhibition that I co-curated with Sarah Kianowski, curator of the collection in the Division of Modern and Contemporary Art. Sarah couldn't join us today, but please know that the work I share is the result of our close collaboration. A few logistics before we dive in. We are using the webinar format in Zoom, so you will notice that your microphones are muted and your videos are turned off. The presentation will last approximately 15 minutes, and we will dedicate the last portion to questions and answers. Please submit your questions via the Q&A box, which you should be able to access at the bottom of your screen. We will answer as many as we can at the end of the presentation. Today's talk is also being recorded, and the video will be posted on our website in the coming weeks. We will conclude the talk at 1 p.m. Now I'll give a brief overview of the exhibition, which brings us together today. It features many prints from the transformative acquisition of around 80 prints that the museums made in 2018. It celebrates the breadth of creativity and imagination explored by over 30 artists who had residencies at Brandywine, where they had the opportunity to make a fine art print. As Brandywine approaches its 50th anniversary, which is simply incredible, Allan joins us today to reflect on that legacy and what the future holds for the workshop. Sarah and I have had the profound pleasure and honor to work with a phenomenal team in the preparation of this exhibition. Each of these colleagues, 3 of whom are students, made meaningful contributions to this project. The exhibition unfolds over 2 galleries, and this is the entrance. In an effort to honor the expansive and inspiring mission of Brandywine, we invited 26 different authors to contribute labels. The contributors included museum colleagues, students, and faculty from over 6 different departments, and they all offer insightful, fresh perspectives on the prints. The second gallery features the inaugural installation of Cedric Huckabee's piece, which you see on the back wall. Titled The 99% Highland Hills, it is comprised of 101 individual portrait prints. At the artist's request, this was a collaboration with students, the installation that is. They met with Cedric over Zoom to discuss his work, and then reconvened a week later to place mock-ups of the prints on the gallery wall. Our colleagues in the exhibitions department then carefully replaced each photograph with the actual work of art. Finally, the exhibition also features a short video that plays on a loop. It includes archival footage from Brandywine, from some of the artists who work there, and Allan. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Allan today, who joins us actually from here, from the Harvard Art Museums, where he's had a chance to see the exhibition. Allan, I'd like to begin by asking you to say a few words about your mission and the values at Brandywine. And I'm showing our audience 2 photographs here. One from on the left from your original location around 1972, and then a photograph of your current location in the historic firehouse.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and it's a pleasure to be here and highly complimented by the installation of the exhibition, the work that you and Sarah have done. Brandywine, as you say, was founded in 1972 by African-American artists and educators in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Its mission has evolved over the years as we started out very much dedicated to serving the communities and high schools across the city, specifically the community where we were first founded, which was a mixed race community in North Central Philadelphia. The mission today is that we are diversity. We've always been committed to diversity, but we're a diversity-driven cultural organization that creates art to inspire and connect and build bridges to global communities. Now we do that through our creation, mainly in the medium of printmaking, which is really great because it fosters collaboration. And that's such a vital part of what we do, is bringing people together at different levels of their training or different levels of their exposure to bring them together to understand diverse art and what contemporary artists are doing.
That's great, Alan. That's what made your workshop so compelling for us at the Harvard Art Museums. And thinking about the satellite collection acquisition was the alignment of our missions, and us being student driven, being teaching driven. And in fact, many of the constituents who helped my colleagues and I decide on the final list for the acquisition of prints from Brandywine were faculty members, and that was deliberate. So we really wanted our faculty colleagues to have input in what made up the acquisition, but also to use them immediately in teaching, as they have done in the history of art and architecture. So now I was wondering, Alan, if you could share some examples of artists who were profoundly impacted and really seized by the possibility of print when they worked with you at Brandywine, because you've worked with so many artists over these 50 years. I think you said you wanted to start with Sam Gilliam, so I've got a image here for us.
He's a very good starting point. As I said a few moments ago, collaboration was important because many of us, if we were teaching in the universities or like myself, teaching in local high schools, and there wasn't a lot of exposure to the medium of printmaking, especially as a fine art medium and an avenue for which kids could pursue once they moved on to college. So we were very much in tune with the lack of exposure and also the need for mentorship. We wanted to bring well-known artists who had established their careers and a certain level of success, to give them exposure to those artists. And Sam Gilling was our very first visiting artist in 1975, during which time he created this screen print called Weyerhaeuser. And what was beautiful about that was Sam is considered primarily a painter and sculptor, but he really loves and embraces the medium of printmaking and the process of it. He also loves the idea of collaboration. And this print, produced in 1975, to show you the level of engagement that he has with the medium, we have made prints with him many times over the years. Most recently, we're engaged with him in a 3-year project, first part of which was to take this image, use digital photography, which was not available at that time, and color separated using software that didn't exist because desktop computers didn't exist at that time. And then we converted that, the color separations, into film. And then the film was cut with a CNC cutter, computer numeric cutter, which didn't exist at that time. So we reimagined the image using the technology of today. And we created a portfolio of 12 prints based upon the original mark making of this image. So there's a continuum with Sam that dates from 1975 to the present. And probably it's in its most robust stage right now in terms of the experimentation and the innovation that we're doing, because we're using so much technology and really, pushing color woodcut, which seems to have somewhat of a emergence in the tools that printmakers are using right now. Another one would be, you mentioned in our discussions about Danny Alvarez. Okay, so this piece, Danny was a graduate of Tyler School of Art. He was introduced to us by one of their professors, John Dow. He said, you should go to Brandywine and apply for the fellowship program, which he did. But by that time, he had moved back to El Paso, Texas, where he lives. And he came up, he made this print. Consequently, a few years later, he went back and inspired by this. This was a woodcut off of plain plywood you can buy from Home Depot or Lowe's. And he decided he was going to keep working in that large format. Now, Danny primarily is a painter. He subsists over painting murals in El Paso and the surrounding area, where he raises his family and does quite well as a muralist. But he was so engaged with the options that this presented, particularly at this scale. This is a 38 by 50 inch piece, which was printed on our litho press. We have a flatbed litho press, which can go down, receive a thicker matrix or plate, such as woodcut, or it can be moved up to level so you could print something flat, like aluminum plates for lithography. And he got all involved in making like 7 or 8 different images and created a series behind his first image, but he had nowhere to print it. So he called up and he said, can I have another residency to come back? Because there's no place in El Paso to print something this large. And so he came back, we did it, and we did an exhibition of his work. And this piece has been collected by several museums now. So I know he's honored, we're honored that it's at Harvard Art Museums now.
That's great, Allan. Something that's come through or become clear to me in all of our conversations over these 5 years is that these residencies weren't just temporal. They were the beginnings of relationships, that you stayed in touch with these artists. And I didn't realize how much you were rethinking the work with them over these decades as well, which is fascinating to think that the work gets pushed and reimagined as time and the conversations evolve. It's great. I was wondering if you could say, speaking of the temporal, if you could say a few words about Cedric Huckabee's, the genesis of Cedric Huckabee's The 99% Island Tales.
Sure.
It's a great story.
It's a fun story because Cedric is such a passionate, I mean, he works all the time. He's a great draftsman, he draws. Most of his subjects are figurative. If they're not, they're quilts and things that relate to the history of family and the craftsmanship. And this was the 99% from several years ago. We were discussing that the 1% held most of the wealth in this country, and the 99% was left to everyone else. And he lives in Fort Worth, Texas. The amazing thing for me, when he came to me and presented these images and said, you know, this is what I'd really like to do. Most artists, we do one print or maybe a series that's related. But he said, I want to do 99 portraits. I'm drawing them from people in my neighborhood. I just go out in the community and I ask people, can I take them, sit and not photograph, which most people would do today, but to sit and sketch them. Because when you sketch somebody, it requires them to sit still and spend time with you. And it requires a lot of trust. They don't know if Cedric's undercover policeman or what. They don't know what's going on in the neighborhoods. When somebody says, you know, sounds crazy, come, let me sit there, let me draw you. So he got really good at it, and people started sharing their personal life stories, life experiences with him. And so he included those statements where they were really impactful and meaningful. He would include those at the bottom of the portraits that he created. But he got so involved, he went beyond 99, he did 101. So we always laugh about that, you know, how he didn't hold to his count. But at any rate, the medium of lithography, it's a flat plane surface, and we used the resources of photo transfer to get his drawings from Mylar to a plate. But we didn't print 101 plates, we ganged them up. A lot of the smaller prints, we might have had 11, 12, 14 images on one sheet. I think the total sheet count was about 9 different sheets of images. They were printed in 2, 3, sometimes 4 colors, black and various grades. And then they were cut and torn once the sheets were finished. So that's how we created it. It wasn't really as a technical challenge, it was a time challenge, because most of our residencies don't go beyond 2 weeks. And there's a reason for that. If you want, I can discuss that real quick. But there has to be a time limit, because a lot of people can't spend weeks at a time away from their family. We want it to be accessible to artists in all situations. The only criteria was that they would be talented, show commitment, and go through the review process and be vetted by an artist advisory. But as a result of this project, though, he's shown at a college in Philadelphia. He did a residency at a hospital just outside Philadelphia for long-term patients, you know, a form of art therapy. And the Fort Worth Art Museum bought the entire collection. Now Harvard has the entire collection. So sometimes the artists come to have one small idea, and you can take it and you can blow it up, because if you can speed up the process, and when we were doing this print, we were doing offset cylinder presses. You know, now we're doing flatbed, which is more one at a time, one color printed, but you still got a motorized cylinder that, you know, makes the impression. You're not rolling it, it's not a whole lot of labor. But when you can speed up the process, you can do things like we made some amazing prints from Al Loving where we took the equivalent of 11 maybe different sheets of paper, printed colors, and then we cut that up and he weaved it together. So the experimentation, the innovation can happen when you don't have to spend so much time and labor in the production side, you know. So the assist of the mechanical press was a real advantage for many, many years. Now, as we look forward to move forward, we're looking to continue to evolve, and evolution can't happen unless you address the technologies. And you know, our creative expression is driven by collaboration and the use of the tools and the processes of printmaking, but printmaking processes have been expanded so much with technology. So we now, for future initiative, we're in the process of developing Print Lab. For many years, we had what we call the Allan Institute. Now we're developing Print Lab, which will bring laser engravers and cutters into the shop and really, you know, kind of expand the options that the artists will have for working. Because we're never just dealing with people that make prints. When you talk about the passion and all, there's some artists that want to explore it because it's a different medium that may help them better understand or see what they're doing in their other medium. And then there's those that are not, you know, as passionate about it, but they want to see how it can help them see their processing and thinking in other medium. So there's a lot of different reasons and a lot of different concentrations that the artists have when they come to us, but we hope they leave with a feeling or a sense of joy at what they can do with printmaking.
That's great, Allan. Many of the artists have said either to our researcher who interviewed them or, you know, in publications that it was thanks to your openness and your completely flexible approach to collaboration that they did feel like they had a joyful, successful time. And I just want to pull up the installation pictures again, just because, I mean, our visitors probably can't get such a sense from these pictures. They'll have to come and see the show, which I hope they do. But just the range of technologies employed and scale. You've got debossing. You mentioned color woodcut, you know, so relief, photolithography, collage, and just so many different offset lithography. It looks like stone lithography. So many different approaches to the medium, and I think that's a testament to your openness and willingness to try new things. So congratulations. I'll stop sharing and ask if you want to say another few words about some future initiatives in the next 50 years of Brandywine.
Okay. Well, as I mentioned, one of the things is continue to expand the technology, the new materials that come into, that become available, to what extent do we use them, to what extent they help the artists, you know, realize their ideas. And the other one, there's three major focuses. One is the Allan Edmunds Fellowship, which I think we're in a path of success with that. We just raised over 1.2 million with the sale of a piece created by the distinguished African-based artist, is Ghanaian, Allan Edmunds. Allan Edmunds received a Lifetime Achievement Award in 2017 and presented us with 3 relatively small pieces that he had done and said, you can sell these and raise money. I said, okay, we can sell them. We're going to raise money. We're going to, with your permission, I'd like to establish an African fellowship in your name. He said, that sounds great, because I knew he was generous with helping support African artists. You know, I mean, I'm sure he's considered wealthy in Africa. I think he's got a workshop that employs about 50 workers. So he's like an industry, right? And the pieces he left, we decided that we were going to build a $5 million endowment, and let's take him up on the offer to sell these pieces. He said, no, don't sell them separate, put them together, and then you get more money. So he gave us drawings and gave us instructions. Everything was done remotely because we're in the middle of a pandemic. And we showed him the results. He said, oh, I like the results. I'll send you some more. He sent us another, doubled the size of what we had already done and created this medium-sized piece. As I say, we just sold its all piece for 1.2 million, and he's given 100% of the proceeds to Brandywine to start us the endowment in his name.
Wow.
So
congratulations.
That's a journey or a route we want to pursue because, as you know, now we have a history of artists that have passed, most notably the Warhol Foundation, and dedicated a lot of their assets to foundations and funds that support other artists. So this giving back and passing it on is really something that's happening. So we're talking to a few other artists, prominent artists. Hopefully we'll do that. And but it also addresses another issue for us, which is since education has always been, exposure has always been a part of what we thought was primary. And so we launched in 2020 the Artour.org database. And this provides online access to our image library and our archives. It's an organic thing. It keeps growing because we keep bringing artists in it because there's a lot of analog stuff from back in the day, the first 30 years that never got to digital. So we're trying to raise money to do that and to sustain the Artour.org database. But if the database is going to stay true to our mission, it needs to continue to be diverse. And the Allan Edmunds Fellowship allows us to be on a constant path of bringing artists from Africa to study and participate and become part of our legacy. We've been doing that with Latin America and Central America, but it hasn't been endowed, but we've done a lot of work in those areas as well. So the print lab, the fellowships to keep us diverse and keep us in our mission statement, align with that in terms of having some kind of global connection because art is global and to support the educational component. And if we do more things broadly, then hopefully we'll have a broader mix of users of our website, the Artour website.
That's great, Allan. Thank you for mentioning it and sharing that. Artour.org was a prime resource for us as we're researching these artists and thinking about this exhibition. It's a fantastic resource. I was wondering if you could say a little bit about the educational work you've done, all the local partnerships, the generations of students and interns you've engaged with over these years, and how those relationships have grown over time.
Well, presently we have 16 satellite collections, which includes universities, art museums, and heritage centers, like the Charles Blockson African American Collection at Temple University, the one in New York. Name escapes me. It's right here, but it's not getting here. The Native American Contemporary Art Center in Santa Fe, the Nevada Art Museum, which is primarily that was entirely our Native American collection. We have University of Texas, we have Arizona State University, and now we have a substantial number, and hopefully we'll grow that into a satellite collection at Telfair Museum in Georgia. RISD has a collection, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. So these institutional partners speak to our capacity and our ability and our networking, which is very important. It gives us access to scholars or artists. We got a program, we're bringing Tatiana Renazzo, who's curated our current show, All My Ancestors. She's at Notre Dame professor. She's coming to the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, and they're co-hosting a public lecture with us. So it's about capacity. It's about intellectual capital that we can access. And it's about getting attention. It's one of the things I always thought of with Brandywine is that to be important, it can't be local. It has to resonate with other communities. And I had the benefit early on of doing a lot of traveling, being a consultant for the National Endowment for the Arts and visiting a lot of communities, particularly, brown and Black and Latino communities, to get to know these organizations and what we're doing. So one of the things we've done at the Art Tour website, when you speak about partnerships, is Bob Blackburn, who was a very close friend of mine and founded the printmaking workshop in New York, which is now called the Bob Blackburn Printmaking Workshop. And that was founded in 1948. He gave us almost 200 prints. Many of them were part of his will that they would be donated to him. Sister Karen Bacalero, who was my friend and the founder of Self-Help Graphics and Art in Los Angeles, when she was living, we exchanged collections of work. We have a collection from the Havana Print Workshop in Havana, Cuba, experimental print workshop, where we had a 4-year partnership relationship there. So we bring them in physically too, theoretically, conceptually, but physically, they're present at Brandywine. My good friend Ruth Fine has given us so many books, and Ruth. I said, Ruth, I asked you, could I put your name on the library? And she said, no, not, but she doesn't want promotion, self-promotion. But recently she gave us another 14 or 20 boxes of books from her extensive library. And I said, Ruth, I'm going to do it now, whether you agree or not. She laughed. I said, you got too many books there, So these are the partnerships. They're institutional, they're human, they're promotional, and it gives us capacity. It's very important.
That's great, Allan. I'm eager to pitch you some questions from our wonderful audience today. So everybody, just please feel free to put it in the chat or the Q&A box. I have another big question for you, Allan, though. Why print? What was it about printmaking?
That's the easiest question. Printmaking. Remember, we put in our mission collaborative process. And I'll go back to Sam Gilling. Sam Gilling was on the cover of Art News. He had draped seahorses outside. This is the first time anybody had done a draping or installation on the exterior of a major museum. And he was like this first generation, really African-American artist, or abstract also, that was being talked about, it made it. And he would be in the studio with these high school students who were helping out. And he turned to them and say, what do you think? And they would be shocked that this man with all this record and intellect and everything else would ask them their opinion. I go there because, Elizabeth, if you can do something where it's not just about you, but you depend upon the skill sets and the abilities of others, and you work together as a team. When we look historically at print workshops, I don't care if it was Dura or whoever it was, particularly the Japanese, somebody took care of wood, we cured for 10 years. Somebody engraved the blocks. Somebody printed them. Somebody cleaned them up. And then the artist signed them. It was always a collaboration. Architecture is a collaboration between the mechanical, the structural engineer. Most things in the world is a collaboration. The dependency upon others' resources or skill sets, and learning occurs in that environment. And that's what we love, so that the kids get a chance to work in the studio, not just look at it on the wall, but to engage with the artist to engage with the student, and the printer to be able to brag and talk about how much they put into a print. It's a democratic meeting. The last part of that is, of course, that because it's a multiple, it's done in additions, it doesn't have to sell for so much. We had a tour yesterday in the gallery, which you led, did a very good job. And comments I got was, my work was hanging on the wall of the Harvard Art Museum. The same thing we got in 2020 when we had a retrospective at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. It's affordable to a level that most people don't really consider when they think about art. They think about it being so expensive and beyond their means. But that's how we were able to build a collector class in Philadelphia to support our efforts. because not only did they not know about printmaking, they didn't know how to place a value on it because they thought it was a reproduction. So you have to educate, you have to do programs, you have to do workshops and put information out there and expose people. And as a result, we developed a collector class in Philadelphia where they hadn't existed before.
It's great, Alan. Something I've always admired about what the way you talk about your legacy and your work is that as soon as you have an idea, you just run with it, and you don't let you find a way to.
I'm crazy like that.
I know it's why you're such a force, as I like to say. Well, thank you so much for everything you've shared today. I will just put up we're out of time, unfortunately. But happily, you and I are going to go have some lunch and talk some more, so we get to keep the conversation going. But thank you to our wonderful audience for joining us today, and please tune in for future programs with us at the Harvard Art Museums. Thank you.